I never thought a casual chat with my neighbor would turn my life upside down, but sometimes the smallest moments reveal the deepest betrayals. My name is Daniel, and I've always considered myself a man who trusts, perhaps too easily. My wife Emily has been my partner for 7 years. We built our life together, shared dreams, bills, and late-night dinners, but I had learned over time that love can sometimes blind you to the truths hiding in plain sight. It all started one ordinary Tuesday evening. I was tending to the small garden in front of our house when Mrs. Carter, our next-door neighbor, waved me over. "Daniel, can I have a word?" she asked, her tone unusually serious. I wiped my hands on my jeans and stepped over, expecting the usual small talk about plants or the weather. Instead, she leaned in, eyes darting around as if the walls themselves might be listening. "I think you should know something about Emily. Something important." Her words hit me like a sudden gust of wind in a calm afternoon. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice calm, but my heart thudding faster than I cared to admit. Mrs. Carter swallowed hard, then whispered, "I didn't want to get involved, but I've seen her with someone else. Not just once. I've noticed them over the past few months." "I'm so sorry, Daniel." For a second, the world froze. My mind raced, refusing to believe what I was hearing. Emily, my Emily, capable of this? I had always trusted her implicitly, never doubted her words, never imagined she could betray me. Yet the proof seemed undeniable. I thanked Mrs. Carter quietly, pretending to remain composed, and went inside the house. Emily was in the kitchen, humming softly, completely unaware of the storm brewing in my chest. I asked casually, "Emily, can we talk?" She turned, smiling, and nodded, brushing flour from her hands. That smile, the one I had loved for years, suddenly felt like a mask. "Of course," she said. I didn't accuse, didn't shout. I wanted her to reveal it herself, to witness the weight of her own actions reflected in my silence. Days passed, and I began piecing things together. Mrs. Carter had given me vague hints, small observations. A certain car that appeared when Emily claimed she was at the gym, messages on her phone she left unlocked for me to see, times she worked late that never matched any schedule. I didn't confront her yet. I needed a plan, something precise and unavoidable, something that would make her feel the consequences of betrayal, without me lowering myself to petty arguments or humiliation in public. The idea came unexpectedly one evening while I sat in our living room, the soft hum of the heater filling the silence. If betrayal thrives in secrecy, then justice must strike in plain view. I wouldn't yell, I wouldn't cry, and I certainly wouldn't beg. I would expose the truth so cleverly that Emily couldn't escape it, yet it would all be undeniable, irrefutable, and entirely public, orchestrated so that she would never forget the day she underestimated me. By the weekend, the plan was set. Mrs. Carter would help me in small ways, observing, giving confirmations, and quietly feeding me details that Emily thought were hidden. I positioned myself like a general preparing for a battle, calm, calculating, patient. Every detail mattered. Timing, location, sequence. Every mistake on her part became a thread I could pull to unravel the carefully maintained illusion she called our marriage. And yet, even with everything laid out, I felt a strange pang of sadness. Betrayal wasn't just anger, it was grief. It was the mourning of the life I thought I had, the home I thought was secure, the love I thought was unconditional. But there was no turning back now. Emily had crossed a line she couldn't ignore, and I was ready to make sure she understood exactly what that meant. The following Thursday, everything began to fall into place. Emily told me she would be working late again. Her voice flat, routine, almost mechanical, like she had repeated the same excuse so many times she no longer cared to make it believable. I simply nodded. "Okay. Stay safe," I replied, keeping my tone calm and supportive, embracing the very role she assumed I would always play, the trusting husband. But that night I didn't stay home. As soon as she drove off, I walked straight to Mrs. Carter's house. She opened the door before I could knock. "She left?" she whispered. I nodded. Mrs. Carter handed me her phone, showing me a photo she had taken earlier that week. Emily smiling in the passenger seat of a black SUV I had never seen before, her hand resting on the shoulder of the man driving. "They've gotten careless," she said gently. "I'm sorry you have to see this." I didn't say a word. The picture spoke loudly enough. Mrs. Carter had one more thing to show me, the man's license plate. She had written it down after noticing him pick Emily up 3 times in the same week. With that small detail, everything became possible. I thanked her, left her house, and sat in my car for a long moment, staring at the steering wheel as though it held all the answers I needed. My heartbeat was steady now, not fueled by shock or panic but by clarity. I drove to a friend of mine, a mechanic named Lucas, who often ran background checks on vehicles for customers buying used cars. He owed me a few favors. "Need something run?" he asked as soon as I walked in. I handed him the plate number. "Just tell me who owns it." He raised an eyebrow but didn't question me. Within minutes, the information appeared on his screen. The car belonged to a man named Eric Dawson. The name meant nothing to me, and yet everything. Lucas smirked. "This guy, he's married. Wife's name is Claire." My stomach tightened, not out of pain but because a new door had just opened. "Can you get me an address?" I asked. Lucas nodded slowly. "You okay, man?" he asked, finally picking up on the storm behind my calm expression. "I will be," I replied. The next phase required timing. If Emily thought she could lie, then I needed her lies to trap her themselves. I waited until Saturday morning, a quiet day when she loved to sleep in. I sat beside her on the bed and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Emily," I said softly, "I'm going to visit a client later today. Should be home by evening." She nodded sleepily. "Okay. I'll probably just relax today," she mumbled, rolling over. But the moment I stepped outside, I drove straight to Eric's house. I didn't know what to expect. Anger, denial, or even a fight. Instead, I found a woman sitting on the porch steps, holding a cup of cold coffee, staring at the ground like she had been sitting there for hours. When she looked up, her eyes were red but steady. "You must be Daniel," she said quietly before I could introduce myself. For a second I froze. "You know who I am?" She nodded. "I found out a while ago. I've been waiting to see when you'd come." Her calmness unsettled me more than any confrontation could have.
I took a deep breath, letting the weight of the situation settle around me. "I know about Eric," I said finally. Her lips pressed into a thin line, but she didn't deny it. That quiet acknowledgement spoke louder than any argument ever could. I could see the realization in her eyes, the first flicker of fear. She had underestimated me, assumed I'd remain blind, patient, and naive. "We need to be clear," I continued, my voice steady. "I didn't come here to yell. I didn't come here to beg. I came here so that the truth can finally stand on its own." Claire, Eric's wife, looked at me for a long moment. I didn't want to believe it either," she admitted. "But I couldn't ignore the signs. Your wife, she's been involved." That confirmation was all I needed. Everything now had a framework, a sequence. The next step was precise, surgical. I returned home, and Emily was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone, utterly unaware. I poured a glass of water, walked into the living room, and sat across from her, letting the silence do most of the work. "Emily," I said calmly, "I think it's time we stopped pretending." Her eyes flicked up briefly, wary, but she didn't speak. I slid the phone across the table. On the screen were the photos Mrs. Carter had taken, the information Lucas had found, and text messages that traced months of deception. Each one was undeniable, each one a thread of the tapestry she had tried so carefully to hide. She froze. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled, and the color drained from her face. "Daniel, how?" she started, but the words caught in her throat. She realized fully, in that moment, that her secrets were no longer hers to control. I didn't gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply leaned back, letting the consequences sink in naturally. "You always had the choice," I said softly, "and now it's too late to undo the damage." Over the next few hours, I coordinated with Claire. She confronted Eric, and the situation unraveled exactly as planned. Emily's carefully curated lies collapsed. Her world spun out of control. She called, texted, and pleaded, but I remained calm, unwavering. Each time she reached out, I let her know simply. The truth was out, and now she had to face it. By the next morning, Emily was a whirlwind of confusion and regret. She had lost her sense of control, the very thing she had relied on to manipulate and deceive. I watched her from a distance, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and satisfaction. Betrayal leaves scars, but it also teaches clarity, resilience, and patience. I had trusted her, given her every chance, and now, justice was silent yet undeniable. In the end, it wasn't about revenge for its own sake. It was about revealing the truth, reclaiming my peace, and ensuring she understood the consequences of underestimating someone who had been patient, observant, and steady. My marriage was broken, yes, but the deception had been exposed, and in that exposure, I regained something far more valuable. Control over my own life, my own dignity, and the knowledge that betrayal can only thrive in darkness, not in the light of truth. Emily sat in the quiet house that evening, finally realizing she could no longer hide behind lies, manipulation, or denial. And for the first time, she understood the cost of her choices, the exact price of betrayal.